Let's get some analysis. We're joined by Quentin Parrinello, who is from Oxfam, the well-known world charity. Quentin, thanks for being with us. These people named in the Pandora papers all deny wrongdoing. How does this make you feel personally?
Well, this is the classic move after every tax scandal that is being revealed by investigative journalists. We've seen the same statements by companies, by rich individuals that are being labeled as a tax avoider. I'm not surprised. I'm a bit sad and outraged, but not surprised because we have not taken the steps to tackle the massive role of tax haven in our economic system yet. So it's not a surprise to see the same people that were in the previous leaks. So not exactly the same people, the same type of people that were in the previous leaks, that were in the Panama Papers, that were in the Paradise Papers. See the same kind of people now in the Pandora Papers. And what you were saying as an introduction is right, because we're basically saying that the richest in our society, when it comes to paying taxes, they're just not playing with the same rules as ordinary people do. And we end up with these people paying less taxes than a nurse, than a teacher. And this is outraging in normal times. This is even more outraging as we emerge from the pandemics and we desperately need the money to build back better.
As you mentioned the Panama Papers back in 2016. So this isn't a new phenomenon. Offshore banking, tax evasion, avoidance, allegedly, they're denying it, but there's evidence that something is happening that's not quite above board. It's almost like no lessons are being learned, isn't it? These things happen and there's a big fuss about it, and then it all just continues and they keep making money and hiding their cash and everyone else has to pay for it.
You're absolutely right. And again, when we don't take the radical reforms to root out tax havens, this is what happens. And if nothing changes, we may as well end up having the same conversation in 1 year or 2 years for the Pandora Papers 2.0. One thing that strikes me, though, with this scandal is the massive representation of public officials. And it's as if the people who are supposed to protect us from tax avoidance, who are supposed to vote the laws to make sure that we tackle tax havens, they're actually benefiting from it. And that rightfully fuel the resentment of the politicians and their role to tackle tax avoidance. And we can talk about changing the rules as much as we want. To make sure that we do so, we need to have elected officials that are here for the greater good, that are not here to amass the vast amount of wealth, to increase their wealth during the time they're in office. And of course, we want to make sure that the message we say is, we can change the rules, we can tackle our tax havens, but to do so, we need to make sure that the officials that have the plans to actually change the rules are in it for the greater good.
And these are massive sums of money we're talking about. It's so much so that in one case, and that of Tony Blair, the former British Prime Minister, there's talk of I think he saved £300,000. And that seems like small beer compared to all the other things. But what could Oxfam do with £300,000? In your position, what could you do with a slice of some of this cash that's being saved or tax that's avoided or however they want to describe it when they try to justify it to themselves?
So you're absolutely right to say that these are massive amount of money. As much as we ordinary citizens don't really understand what it is, what's a billion today, what's 10 billion, what's 100 billion, we don't understand, how much it represents. What we can say, though, is that all of this money that is not being paid by these people, allegedly again, is as much money that is not invested in public services, that is not invested in hospitals, in schools, in making sure that we tackle inequality, that we protect the poorest in our society. And this is why tax avoidance at this industrial scale, as it's being revealed by the leak, is so outrageous, because we need that money to make sure that we build the infrastructure, that we build the hospitals, that we build the schools to build a better society in a nutshell. And yes, this is, we can talk all we want about, is it enough to make the headline? Is the Blair case enough compared to the Jordan case, compared to whatever case is going to come up in the next few hours by the ICIJ? But this is real money that we need to build back better.
Indeed. And just a final question. The rich world, which is predominantly white, looks down on the poor world, which is predominantly not white, and says, well, that's the kind of corruption you expect to find there. And I've heard people say that, and I've heard guests say that kind of thing. It's a very patronising way. What's interesting about this data dump is it's showing that white rich people in the rich world are doing this. And the poorer people in those countries are suffering too. It's something that basically is changing the sort of the frame in some ways of this kind of idea of corruption, this idea of corrupt practice. Allegedly, I'll add at the end.
Yes, I mean, to resort to that kind of tax planning, you need money, you need experts. And what we can see right now, even for billionaires, because there are more than 100 billionaires that are featured in the ICIJ, they're predominantly white, they're predominantly males, and they're benefiting the most from the system. You're taking, for instance, figures by Gabriel Zachman, the French economist. He's saying that the top 0.1%, they have on average 10 times more assets offshore than the average people. So what we're seeing is that this industry has been created for and by the richest in our society, and this is driving the rest of the population poorer. This is undermining our fight against inequality. This is undermining our fight to make sure everyone lives better.
Indeed, stopping you get a chance, stopping the people you're trying to help get a chance, stopping my kids getting a chance, stopping us all getting a chance because of their greed. It is a poor state of affairs, and congratulations to the journalists who've exposed this, and obviously we're looking to see all developments. Quentin Parrinello, thank you very much indeed, speaking to us from Oxfam, the renowned world charity dealing with famine across the world, but also Quentin there commenting in great depth about the Pandora papers, and of course we're watching for all developments on the story.